Welcome to Beyond Pipeline, where we talk about how to win the inner game of sales. My name is John Haboosh, and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest. He is one of the hosts of the longest running daily sales show in history, and he's probably one of the biggest personalities in the software sales world. Without further ado, James, say what sales Buckley. What's up, my man? How are
What is
you?
up, dude? I appreciate that edification. I don't know if I'm like the biggest personality,
You
but
got to be one of them, man. You
I
got to be
know I
one of
got a
them.
lot of it.
Yeah.
Scott Leese and
Scott Lee's is good too.
Niraj Kapoor will both
Yeah.
tell you that I'm the happiest person they know.
That's amazing. What honestly, I wasn't planning on this, but how do you define happiness and what plays into that for you?
This is actually a good question. Scott and I have been back and forth on this a lot. Niraj and I come back on it. Tim Clark and I have talked about it in the past. I've talked about happiness with so many people. And the truth is that happiness is what you want it to be, what matters to you, and how you achieve it, right? I remember some people define happiness by the number of dollars in their bank account all the time, right?
Hmm.
Or the number that they pull down on an annual basis. And I remember when my wife and I were in school, we survived on $15,000 a year between
Oh,
the two of
dude.
us. We had four kids. We were divorced. We were going to school full time. It was tough, man, but we made it work. So because that's true, and we survived on that, anything above that is like, oh my gosh, we're doing so well, right? Like
Yeah.
it's amazing. And then of course
Yeah.
we graduate. She got her master's.
Yeah.
She's like my business inspiration now. Like I look to her for advice and stuff. Like the way that we viewed it was this was our financial goal. We want to take our families to dinner without having to check our bank account first to make sure that we can.
Oh boy.
Once
Yeah.
we surpassed that point, we always remembered it, right? And that for us was our financial, like monetary marker for happiness, not whatever's higher than $15,000, but the fact that we can do what we want when we want without having to look at our bank account first to make sure that it's okay. That's
Yeah.
what we wanted out of life. So, what is happiness? Happiness is defined as the thing that you get out of bed for every night and are excited to do with your life.
I
If
like
you're
that.
doing that and you're making $55,000 a year, you win the game.
I agree with you, dude. Yeah, I agree with you. How do you we're going deep early, but I love it. How do you define how do you actually get yourself to define what gets you excited every day? So I think that's where when I talk to a lot of
Mm,
people about like how to win the inner game of sales, a lot of it's just like knowing your
sure.
values, knowing the beliefs you want to have, knowing the character traits you want to have, and then doing it. But like how do you actually, at least in my opinion, but like how do you actually define like what's happiness for you? Like how do you actually go about that?
I think it changes as we age and it changes as we grow personally and professionally. One of the things I'm very fond of saying is that you can't grow professionally until you're willing to grow personally. If you
Oh,
think
I like
about
that.
those two things and how
I
they
agree with
work
you.
hand in hand, it's really obvious, but most people it never dawns on. So when you think about like, what's the growth goal? If it's, I want to make X amount of dollars, well, do you need to stay where you are to do that? And if you do, what does that timeline look like? Can you work with your leaders to make sure that there's a path to that for you? Financial freedom is a massive milestone that everyone should strive to achieve in their life as soon as possible, whatever that looks like. Some people, it looks like $55,000 a year, and they are amped about that. It's more than they've ever made in their life. For other people, they want to make $500,000 a year. There's a path to that for you somewhere. I challenge everyone to go find it if that's what they want. But sometimes it's not about money. It's also about like how we manage our stress, how work and life function together with us. John Barrows and I had a conversation many, many years ago about the balance. People use the word balance. My work life balance. This sucks. If I think about, and John taught me this, right? If you think about balance, you're on a tightrope and you've got this stick and you're always like tense trying to like keep it on one side or the other. My left side dips, so I got to lift it up. My right side dips, I got to lift it up so that I can stay on the line. I don't want to live a life like that. Instead, I view the work life as an integration, an API, something that works together. If I'm smart, I can manage my time to have 15-minute buffers between my calls so I'm not overwhelmed. 30-minute hold times on my calendar throughout the day, twice, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, so I can play catch up with the admin work and not have it
Yeah.
overwhelm me on a Friday afternoon. You can manage your time effectively so that it feels more integrated. And isn't that what we want? A
There you go.
lifestyle that allows us to work and play to where we don't feel stressed out about either. I don't want to go on vacation and think about work. I don't want to be at work wishing for vacation.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think too, like this work-life balance thing, I think is such a overplayed, underdefined thing. I really like that you guys view it a little more of like an integration of your
Time
life. And
management and task
yeah,
management are your best friends. If you want that
yeah.
lifestyle, those are the two skills, and they are different skills: time management and task management, and they work together. If you like, I use Asana, for example. That's my task management software of choice. If I go on a Monday morning and look in Asana and I see my entire week's worth of tasks, I go on my calendar and I time block out all the estimated times that I need to complete those tasks on time.
Mhm.
Then, you know what I don't hear? Hey, James, this is overdue. Where is it? James, you missed this deadline. When can we expect that from you? And then I'm stressed out, right?
Yeah.
This is a better management tactic. Look at your tasks, look at your calendar, block off the time, block off everything in your life on your calendar. And this is the rule of thumb. If it doesn't exist on your calendar, it is not happening in real life.
I like that. I like that a lot. I want to come back to the thing you said. You said in order to essentially like in order to get to a goal that you want, you have to personally change. What was
Right.
it you said?
Yeah, the way it's phrased is that you cannot grow professionally until you
Until
are
you grow
willing to
personally.
grow
Yeah, I
personally.
like that.
One has to happen. It's
Yeah.
chicken and egg.
What experience in your life, if it was one or several, like what drove you to have that belief about life?
Oh man, go through a divorce, that's a
Okay.
lot of personal growth. It's
Yeah,
also a lot of professional growth because you learn what to keep private and what to bring into the work environment, right?
I got it.
If you look at not just going through a divorce, but job changes, there's a lot of personal growth that happens anytime you change a job. What'd you learn from that last thing?
Mhm.
You left for a reason. If it was a bad reason, can you avoid doing that at this next job? If it was a good reason, can you bring that same thing into this role, right? So when you look at your life's achievements and your life's failures and apply that to the lessons that you've learned through your professional career, a lot of things coincide. Once we start drawing these lines, it's a very easy thing to take all of our growth goals and say, what am I doing personally that feeds into that professional growth? And then take all those personal goals and say to yourself, what am I doing professionally that's feeding into those personal
Yeah.
goals? I know a lot of people that want to travel more. And you go, great. What's the how come you're not traveling? And they're like, I just don't make enough money. And I'm like, how long have you been at your job? And they're like, 11 years. You're like, why don't you go find a job that pays you more? And I know that sounds like you should all quit your job and go for more money. No, go for the jobs, go for the lifestyles that you want. If you're not going to get there at a job in 11 years, you're probably not going to get there, right? You have the choice to stay there and accept that lifestyle as your own, or go search for that job that's going to get you to that financial goal to be able to travel more. And that was your ultimate personal goal. I'm using that as
Yeah.
a very simplified example, but
Yeah,
you
but it's a good
understand
one.
how one affects the other in a big way. And it's all about like finding that thing that you want and then taking actions to get there. It's like I don't know if you ever saw What About Bob with Bill Murray, baby steps, right? That's
Baby steps, baby. Yeah, I think I think that that is such a good point because it's all about again, it's like what do you want? Okay, like what do you need to change about yourself to move forward? Like what do you think makes change so hard for people?
oh,
Maybe specifically in the sales community when it comes
yeah,
to if you want to close, if you if you want to hit quota or exceed quota, or if you want to be a better cold caller, if you just want to be
right.
less stressed, like what do you think makes change so hard for people in those areas?
It is our inability to accept it.
Okay.
We like humans in general, most humans, let me say most humans. There are some statistical outliers. I work with a lady, her name is Vicky. She's a thrill seeker, right? This person adapts to change very quickly. In fact, she seeks it out, right? They are rare humans. Most humans, we like homeostasis. We like comfort. And once we're there, we're fine. I don't want to change anything. Don't rock the boat. You hear these types of cliches all the time, right? Our ability to seek out change and grow professionally, that's the same kind of change that helps us to grow personally. We don't always connect the two, but that's what makes it hard. I think it was Richard Harris that said to me once of Harris Consulting Group that said, Change is always better when it's done with us instead of to us. When you think about
Yeah,
the
yeah.
changes that come your way at work that you're not expecting, they're often daunting a little bit, sometimes inconvenient. We make faces when we see, oh, I don't like that, right? we get like,
Been
oh,
there.
that sucks. That's a
Yeah.
shitty process, right? We get like, and it's not that it's shitty, it's that it's different.
It,
And we
it,
don't
it
like
could be
different.
shitty.
It could be shitty. I'm not saying it's not shitty. Let me be really clear.
Yeah, I'm
It
having fun.
might
I'm having fun. I'm having
actually be
fun. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
shitty.
Oh God. I'm
But it
having
is our
fun.
inability to accept change and seek it out that makes it difficult for us to grow, whether personally or professionally, because we can change all the things. It's our choice. Another thing is the external. It's very easy for people to go like this and
Yeah,
wag their finger at some
yeah,
other cause. I didn't hit quota because the SDRs didn't set enough meetings for me. I didn't hit my quota because marketing didn't do their job. I didn't close those deals because my system went down yesterday, or I didn't close those deals because they didn't sign right on time like they agreed. It's harder to go, what could I have done, and point that finger inward and say, what could I have done
yeah.
differently to make this go a different way? That's the thing no one does, or I should say, very few people
Very few
do.
people. What? Yeah.
Accountability is
Dude, you
so
took the
difficult,
word.
so
What do you think
difficult.
makes accountability so difficult though? Because like it's kind of like the key to freedom, right? Because otherwise everyone else has control over you, whoever you blame.
Yeah, yeah. I accountability for me equals fear. If I get held accountable for something I didn't do or didn't come up right on,
Yeah.
it's a fear of criticism. It's a fear that someone might view me differently. I lose a little bit of credibility, maybe a lot of credibility, and that depends on what the severity of that lacking was, right? I think
Yeah.
fear, again, is what stops us from taking those chances, from doing those things that we think we're not good at, right? So, what stops us from being accountable? The judgment, the fear of judgment that's going to come from an
Hmm.
external factor that, in the grand scheme of things, is probably not that big a deal, but because in the moment you're the one being put under the microscope, we feel like we're being persecuted for the lack, or the shortcoming, if you will. So accountability is tough for that reason, in my experience. Some people have no problem with accountability. I am the first person to be like, that's my bad, that's me.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I share that sentiment for whatever reason. I don't have that hard of a time saying, "Oh, I screwed up." But I do still want to look good, and I don't. I'm still trying to balance, understand that balance. But
A quick tip,
um,
I've learned that I look better saying that's on me, my
yeah,
fault.
yeah, yeah.
I look better doing that than I do saying, well,
Kind of
this
covered
was
up.
bad, or that
Yeah,
was bad,
I
or,
totally agree with
this
that.
person let me down, or this person didn't do their job. Don't do these things. It just makes you the toxic person.
Yeah, I agree with that. How do you get yourself to stay accountable? Like, what do you do? Is I think a lot of people struggle with accountability. It's so easy to brush it off. Go look at social
Yeah.
media. If you need, you need to go prospect. You're gonna go watch a TV show. You know, you need to go and maybe work on your sales skills, and you decide that you're not gonna go do that today.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
or even hit the gym or whatever it is. Like, how do you hold yourself accountable?
So there's a couple of pieces to that puzzle. Holding ourselves accountable comes along with routine and discipline, in my experience.
Hmm.
It takes like 5 times longer to build a good habit as it does to build a bad one, break a bad one. So, when you find that bad habit, you kind of have to double down and figure out what it is you need to do to change that pattern. But that's sometimes easier said than done, right? And it depends on like all the different factors that come into that. When it comes to our sales best practices, I think it's a two-way road, right? If you want to be on the leaderboard, then it's on you to find what success looks like to you and take actions to get there. And I say this all the time, it is nobody's job to make you successful. That responsibility lies solely with you.
Yeah,
Whether or not it's happening in the sales function or a different function, or not happening in the sales world at all, and maybe you go manage a restaurant or something, that's your decision. But your job as a human is to make yourself successful, whatever that might look like.
yeah,
So when you get to a job, whether you're an SDR or a server at a restaurant, we'll use the same analogy, somebody trains you, somebody helps you, you get onboarded, you learn things, but then the leash comes off. You now have the reins. You now have control over your destiny. What does it look like? Are you working hard at it? Morgan J. Ingram, my very good friend, tells this story about being an SDR and failing and feeling like it wasn't working for him. And then he went to his manager at Terminus at the time and he said, I don't think I'm cut out for this. And she said, are you really giving it 100%? And he was like, no. And when he did, he became the man he is today. And if you don't know Morgan J. Ingram and you're listening to this, go follow
You should
him
probably
now.
go check him out. Yeah.
Yeah, crawl out from under the rock you're in
The Rock,
and
yeah,
go follow
yeah,
that man and learn a lot.
yeah, yeah. I agree. So yeah, it sounds like it comes back to taking ownership and being, yeah, being,
To an extent, but also my team holds me accountable. We are not afraid to hurt each other's feelings. And that's
I think it's so
big.
important. Yeah. What enables you guys to have the safety to talk so honestly? I feel like teams really struggle today to call stuff out. Everything's kind
It's a
of
good question.
padded and everything's kind of just like, oh well, you could have done better. And like again, I don't communicate like that, so I have a hard time. So and I'm actually trying to learn from you. Like, how do you guys open and create that type of environment?
I think that we have this type of environment with people we work with externally to begin with. We're very transparent with each other with external factors. Our culture is such that we will tell you everything that you want to know, but eventually you're going to have to pay to play, right? I'm happy to give you all the information, but if I share everything with you and I tell you all the stuff, what is your reason for coming back to me, right? You have to be able to pull that trigger when you're ready. The same thing happens internally, right? We have to build relationships that allow us to say, hey, Kevin, can we hop on for 45 seconds? I have a quick question. And then ask about something that might be bothering you, or say, hey, when you said this, it kind of felt like you thought X. Am I reading that right? You have to develop these types of languages. And I've heard lots of different ways to do this as a team internally. I spoke with one lady who said that she remembers an office that had little cubes on their desk, and the cubes were all different colors. Each color meant something about their emotional status at the moment. So if I
Okay.
approached somebody at their desk that had a yellow cube, it meant that they were feeling sad today. Maybe if I'm coming down on them for some deadline they missed or something, I can approach that a little more gingerly. If somebody had a red one, they were feeling excited and happy. Something good was coming up. They were in a great mood and they wanted you to know that. Yeah, maybe red's a bad color for that. Green. Okay,
I
whatever.
get it.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, you understand the purpose, right? Like we build bridges between each other, just like we build bridges between our prospects. We're very transparent with one another. Even when we feel slighted, we have no problem saying, this is how I
Yeah.
feel, right?
Yeah.
That sucks because, right?
Yeah.
And because we're able to have those conversations, we can get to the meat of things. And I have a CEO, Christopher Merrill, who's very good at bringing the volume down. Oftentimes we end up in these heated conversations where he'll say, James, why does this matter? And it turns out it's just my energy going in the wrong direction, not a bad direction, but the wrong direction, right? I'm worked up about something that is small. This type of growth, surround yourself with these people that can help bring you back down when
Like
you're
that.
at your worst. I'm fortunate to work with an entire team of people that's great at this because I need that in my life.
Yeah. And you mentioned getting worked up. I feel like we'll get worked up about again, whether it's not hitting quota or hitting numbers or who got promoted and things
Stress
like
is
that.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, how do you get yourself back to equilibrium when you do get worked up? Like what are some things you do when
Yeah.
again maybe you have a bad cold call or you have a bad call with or discovery or whatever
Yeah.
it is,
Wow. So
but
I've been a cold caller long enough that when somebody hangs up on me or if somebody's rude to me, I kind of just chuckle. At this point, it's fun and it's
I think a
funny.
lot of people have an issue with that. I agree with you, dude. I've been there, but like I think a lot of people have an issue with that. Like I'd love to.
Some people do, but I feel like the reason they have an issue with it is because they take everything so seriously. They
Yeah.
take it really personally. And I'll be frank with you, like this job is supposed to be fun. And if nobody is having fun buying from you, you are not having fun selling. No one wins. You're not going to sell anything if you're sucking it up, not having a good time, being angry about your job, hating all the rejection, right?
Yeah.
And no one is going to buy from you if every conversation you have kind of feels like an aggressive approach. So take a step back and see if you can approach this in a more fun way. A lot of times I'll cold call and people will say at the end of the call after we schedule a meeting sometimes, or even if we don't schedule the meetings, they'll be like, thanks for the call. This was fun, or this was refreshing.
Yeah, try to have
Start
fun.
hearing
Yeah,
that shit.
bring
You have
energy.
won the game, yo.
Yeah. I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
So how do you deal with it, right? I think that most of us have this mentality that things are just going to start happening for me right away, especially because people pitch it that way. You hear this in interviews all the time. Don't worry, this part's easy. Don't worry, this is just a stepping stone. Don't worry, this is just a starting point. It's a foot in the door. None of these things are true. They're selling the job to you. You should be qualifying them the way that you qualify, the way they want you to qualify their prospects for the job. What does this look like? Am I going to be happy here? Is this culture for me? Do I feel like this is somewhere I can put roots down, or is this my stepping stone for real, for real? Right? Know the
Yeah.
difference between those things. And if you do, then you can approach it the way you need to so that it's not this thing that you hate doing every day of your life.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of it for you is just like to bring the to keep yourself at equilibrium and make sure that even like you're consistent, like having fun, trying to find ways to have fun and just
Compare
bring
every
better
terrible
energy.
call you have to the worst thing that ever happened to you, whatever that
Yeah.
might be.
That's
Maybe
really good
you,
perspective.
maybe like me, you lost a parent. Maybe like me, you went through a terrible divorce. Maybe
Mhm.
like me, you have overcome addiction and been through some
Mhm.
shit, right? If you compare getting hung up on a cold call to some shit like that,
Or like, yeah,
that
I like
cold
this
call
frame.
is the smallest problem you
This
have.
frame.
I
Yeah.
guarantee it.
Yeah. I like this frame. I think a lot of life is I'm learning is about like having good mental frames in your back pocket to bring yourself back to neutral or to equilibrium. Um, let's dive into
Homeostasis.
homeostasis. Exactly. Yeah, I love that word. Homeostasis. I love
Yeah,
it. Uh, let's go a little bit into, if you're okay with it, like working through whether you want to talk about your divorce, working through addiction. I think those things are so, the relationships
ah,
and addiction are so challenging for people. It's because
yeah,
it's such a rut. And I think I'm leaning a little more towards the addiction side. I think it's not something that's talked about a lot, but I think especially in sales,
sure.
high pressure culture, like even I talk with a lot of folks that you probably even know in our sales world, and we talk about just how to handle different things and how to replace bad habits with healthy habits. I think addiction is something that's probably more of a challenge than people want to let on. What
Oh
was
yeah.
your yeah, can you walk us through what that journey has been like for you of what challenges you had, how did you overcome them, just how you got here today?
Sure, man. So my addiction is a drug addiction, former
Cool.
drug addiction, right? I was doing a lot of coke in Miami, and that was where I needed to get away was Miami. So, like a lot of people, I had tried different things. I never really like was successful for a very long time, and then one day I did too much, and I ended up in the hospital,
Oh
and
wow.
my heart was the size of a football. And the doctor was like, dude, like, I'm not gonna tell you how to live your life. I see a lot of people like you every day. This is an ER, but one day your heart could just like explode. And then in 8 seconds, you would be dead. And there's nobody in this building that could save you. Right. Like, that's what the way he worded it. Like, the next day I called a Mayflower truck and we booked it out of Miami to East Tennessee. And it was the best move I ever made because I just like separated myself from all that bad that I was involved in. And I started this whole new life with strangers, people I didn't know. And I could be anybody that I wanted. And then something happened. My father passed away. And you relapse, you dive back into a bottle, you dive into the bag, and that is life, and you deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
When you go through something like that and then you pull yourself out of it once again and you go through a divorce shortly after that, right? And then you go back to college and you get a degree and you start a career, man, just keep riding the wave. I tell everybody
Yeah.
about this fence that I've been on and I give this speech a lot, right? I get on this fence and I stay on the fence. It's a grass is greener fence. It always looks better on the other side, right? It's true. So here's the deal: get on the fence and stay there. On one side of the fence, there's all these people that want to be where you are. So keep reaching down and helping them up on the fence. And on the other side of the fence, there's all these people that are where you want to be. Reach up. Some of them will help you on their fence. Never let go of these individuals. Keep pulling people up onto your fence. Keep getting pulled up onto the next tier fence up. You're going to win. I guarantee it. Just stay on the fence.
I like that. Just stay on the fence and like God, that was such a it was such a it was a it was a powerful story to have you just walk through like how you got clean, relapsed, and you dealt with your father passing, you went to school. Like
Yeah.
what were you telling yourself through all of that? Because that took several years. I think like what I really resonate with you on that is like that was a challenge that lasted several years. I'm sure there were some days where
Oh,
you woke up and you did not want to be you that day.
actually,
Like,
no, I was very fortunate that I had a support system around me at the
that's
time.
awesome.
I met a woman that put me in college. She signed me up. I was like, I can't believe you signed me up for college. I didn't want to do it. And she was like, just do one semester. And if you love it, you can stay. And if not, you can leave. But I ask you to just give me one semester. Bro, there were like bean bags and ping pong tables and vending machines. I was like, this is awesome. I'm coming back tomorrow. Right. Like,
I
I
love
ended up
that.
with an associate's and then we transferred to a 4 year college together and we ended up getting our bachelor's degrees. I worked while she got her master's degree, right? Like we supported each other.
Hmm.
And that's the thing that got me through it was having this other person to help guide me along the way, give me good advice, give me good
Hmm.
personal and professional advice. Here's how I would handle that. Hey, what if your emotions are getting in the way and this might be better? That person is a person that I needed in my life at that moment and got me through it. And here we are 15 years later, still married. Like, you go through things with people because that's the way it goes. Very rarely does somebody go through something alone. And if they do, there's probably always somebody that they could reach out to. And if you're somebody that knows somebody that might be going through it alone, you should reach out to that person and be that rock for them. I
Yeah.
end up being the rock for a lot of people, but I got my rocks too.
Yeah. So it sounds like for you, it's a lot about having even a community, even if the community is just two people, but having a community or someone to rely on.
If you need to call it an outlet, fine. But everybody kind of needs an outlet. And sometimes the people you work with make great outlets, but sometimes they
I
don't.
don't, yeah.
So know the difference between that. I have made the mistake in the past of being labeled as the toxic employee. It's not a good label. It never transfers well. And once you catch that stink on you, it's difficult to get it off.
Yeah. Yeah. I, I, I would agree with you. And I think I like your point about community. I think a lot of people are opening up to community more and more now, especially just dealing with
Got to be careful with the word community.
challenges.
Sometimes you mean audience.
Interesting. Okay. That's fair. That's a fair call out. That is a fair call out. Um, with that said, let's talk a little bit about I Uncrushed. I know that
Yeah.
I know that you led that. It sounds like you led that podcast or were at least a leader of it.
Yeah, I did.
Can you talk to everyone about it? What drove you to start it? What did you
Yeah, it
learn
was
from it?
actually a great friend of mine, Tim Clark, who's over at Sprout Social. Tim Clark and I put the podcast together with Grant
Tim
Green.
Clark.
Grant Green
Okay.
was our producer, who's now with Zoom Info. Grant Green is a very talented producer, and he's a content creator. This dude is amazing. And I learned a lot in that time period. But the podcast was about mental health in business. The truth is that business naturally suppresses mental health issues because it's
Yeah.
costly, whether it's at a benefits level or at a time away level. They look at mental health issues. I say the general business practice is, if you have a mental health problem, we have resources, but we're not going to go out and voluntarily start these conversations to find out if people have mental health problems, right? I feel like the podcast was needed because there are so many mental health stories of, if you needed to call it suffering, fine, and you need that relatability, okay, but victories as well, right? People
Mhm.
that overcame these business mental health issues, these let's call it self-doubt, let's call it imposter syndrome, let's call it personal trauma that impacts us professionally, loss of parents and car wrecks and injuries and just stuff like that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And dude, we still have to come to work and perform. This podcast needed to exist and now it does, and I'm glad that it does. Unfortunately, it was a very emotional podcast, and the straw for me was that I had a gentleman that was supposed to share his suicide attempt story with me on an episode, and then when we were supposed to record the episode, he didn't show up. And when he didn't show up, my heart and my mind immediately went to the worst, and I lost it. Like, I was so panicked and stressed out for a whole weekend. This was on a Friday. Come Monday, he reached out to me and said, "Oh, I totally spaced it and I was on vacation and I'm super sorry." And I was relieved that he was alive, but I was like, I got to step away from this. This is like, how many suicide stories can you hear before it starts to bring your own spirit
Yeah.
down a little? And as much as I loved the show and what it represented and what it was for, that emotional stress for me was entirely too great through a weekend. It was enough for me to
Yeah.
set that mantle down and walk away from it. But I'm glad that we did it because I think it opened up a big conversation about mental health in business. I think it opened up a lot of people's minds to what their employees might be going through and employees about what their leaders go through, right? For every stress that you feel as a frontline rep, times 10 and give it to your leader because they're responsible for the shit you got going on too.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. What do you think makes, like, I'll call it sales enablement, or just like keeping sales specific? Like, what do you think makes the sales leadership or sales enablement not focus on like more mental skills? Is it again just that people don't want to touch that type of thing? When I say mental skills, I mean defined as like what are some ways you can just simply like boost confidence on a cold call, or what are some ways that you can show up a little bit less stressed, or what are some ways that we can, have you control your controllables, so you're not freaking out about quota all the time? Like,
Yeah.
what do you think makes that not a topic? Because it's always been a struggle, I'm sure, ever since quotas ever began. But it doesn't seem like it's a part of any sales enablement I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to have a sales job and not feel some level of pressure or stress.
I agree
So
with that.
if that's your aim, you're going to be searching for that job for a very long time. Sales is about forward moving progress, moving the goalpost, setting a mark and hitting it so that you can set a bigger mark the following year. That's what sales is about in the modern age. So if you're looking for that, if you're looking for a stress free role, it's not marketing or sales in 2024, I assure you. Right. So let's think about the things that help us cope with the jobs that we have. Personally, I was diagnosed 2.5 years ago with type 2 diabetes, and that forced me to go to the gym because lifting weights and cardio apparently keeps my A1C and my sugar really low. So now I start going to the gym 2, 3 times a week. Guess what? My focus improved. My physical health was a direct reflection of my professional performance. And I saw a difference in how much I could accomplish in a day and the level of focus that I had in my messaging and the results that I saw improved. So, physical fitness is a great place to start for your emotional health. I'll give it that. I never thought I'd be someone to say that, but I'm saying it now. Um, Diet was a big change for me. I still struggle with this. I eat pizza like a crazy person, man. But
What's
you
your
can't.
favorite type pizza?
New York style pizza, just about any pizza in New York that I've had has outdone it all. There's a place here in town called Jaboni's, which is based out of Long Island, New York, and it's fantastic. And then we have another place here called Metro's Pizza. That's pretty good, but it's only because they do a sourdough crust. Some people like glazed. I'm not a huge fan of glazed pizza. Those little personal pizzas they do, they're all right. But all in all, I'm pretty sure that New York style, New York crust pizza, specifically cold cheese. If you don't know about the cold cheese pizza trend in New York right now, Ryan Holohan, the Irish hooligan out of New York City, he turned me on to that. That's he's a good guy to go for the pizza references.
I absolutely love it. I got totally got us off topic. I'm sorry. Go back though. You're talking about getting healthier, right? Eating healthier is a
Yeah,
big
diet, right?
challenge.
You are what you eat. Just the
Yeah.
other day, we went out for pizza, and I ate a few slices of pizza, and the physical response that I had was just so uncomfortable, right? I couldn't imagine having pizza and sweating the way I was sweating and trying to sit at my desk and do prospecting. I was so uncomfortable, right? Your diet makes an enormous improvement on your performance as well. You are
Mhm.
what you eat. Vin Matano is a great guy to follow on Twitter and
Okay.
he posts a lot about the stuff that he eats and I try to like make my plates like his. They never look as good. I don't know what it
Okay.
is.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna guess off topic. Trent Dressel and I are talking about this because he lives in Austin, and we were talking about I got like Ninja Foodie, and we put
Oh,
chicken thighs in there, and he used to do chicken breast. We told him that Vin told him to go and do chicken thighs, and
yeah.
so I started doing chicken thighs too. It's delicious. Yeah, Vin, if you ever
Yeah.
watch this, shout out, bro. Thank you.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that. So working out, eating healthy, right?
Yeah.
It's just like those are some key things to.
Yeah, from a mental exercise perspective, I would say I write a lot of like what's important to me, what's not. I write a lot of what's helping me get to my goal and what's not.
Mhm.
And you can let go of the things that are not helping you get to the goal. That's a good one. I would say journal. Morgan J. Ingram will
Mhm.
tell you that he journals often. Some people do video clips. Some people, and I'll tell you, I know a guy that does this, and this really helps him. He will turn his recorder on and catch his audio
Yeah.
while he drives because he thinks very clearly while he's driving. So he captures all this recordings on audio and then goes back and listens to it and captures all the great ideas and stuff that he has. And he talks out loud while he's driving. He's a true extrovert, right? He has to speak to form thought.
I
And
love
that's
that.
that's the way it goes, right? But some people do that, and I find that that helps them process things. It helps them capture things that could help them later. If they have an idea, sometimes it's fleeting. Turn that camera on, turn that recorder, hit that button, and capture that moment, and set a reminder about it so that you can come back to it and execute on it later. It will help your stress.
Yeah, I like that. Like capturing ideas and making sure you have a process for doing so, kind of clearing your head, right? Whatever that is for people, but just finding a way to clear your head.
Some people will call it a brain dump. You know,
Okay. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you want
I
to
like
get it
that.
all out somewhere. Get the venom out. I've heard a lot of cliches about it, right? Like get it all out onto something so that it's not all rattling around in your brain unorganized.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so key. I even take Sunday mornings to do that. So I really like that little tip there. Um,
I used to be a big Sunday guy, but I'll tell you that this work life integration, this API, has allowed me to completely detach, with the exception of things that need to be done. And sometimes it's an hour on Sunday where I'm looking and planning, etc. But
mhm.
most Sundays, you ain't gonna catch me, man. I'm on the river. I'm on the water.
Yeah, I do also try to keep Sunday sacred, but I like
Yeah.
that approach.
I
I
like
like that
Sacred
approach.
Sundays. Is that the new podcast coming out? Sacred Sundays?
Sacred Sunday. I bet you someone's got it. I bet you someone's got it. Yeah. I saw a post from you probably a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna take two ideas and combine them. Wish me
Yeah.
luck. So one of your posts was what was it? It was insecurity is a
Oh,
productivity killer. And
man.
then I also noticed on Sell Better, one of your key focuses or key claims, which I know you do this, is to help salespeople develop more confidence, right,
Mm,
in their day-to-day roles. Like, can you help me understand like what you meant by insecurity as a productivity killer, and then tail
yeah.
that back into how people can develop confidence?
Yeah, I'll kind of wrap insecurity into imposter syndrome here, but insecurity shows itself in so many ways. Did I do a good job? Nobody said good job to me. I am an attaboy seeker. Thanks to my father, I feel like I'm never good enough because he spent my entire childhood telling me that I wasn't good enough, right?
Yeah.
This type of shit, we carry it for life and it translates into our professional performance in ways that are unhealthy. Seeking those attaboys is something I can't do. And yet I'm drawn to them in ways that make it so that I seek them out. But that means I'm doing it for the wrong reason, whatever it is I'm doing, right? I'm looking for approval. The truth is, what my mind will not allow me to accept is that I don't need approval to do things, make things, build things, fix things, do the outreach, create the conversation, right? Every single closed op that I have, every new meeting booked, right? You go in and you celebrate it somehow. And it's such a catch 22. People are like, oh, we got to celebrate the little things. But then, oh, he celebrates everything. Yeah. Right? Which one is it? Our egos are often the thing that hurts most. When we're hurt, when we miss the quota, when we come up short on something, when we phone it in, our ego is the thing that gets impacted the most. So insecurity shows itself, and suddenly you're like, oh my gosh, am I on the chopping block? Like, I notice that I'm like on the outside of these conversations. I bet they have like a Slack channel where they're like, fuck James, right? Like these are thoughts that people really do have. It's not true. Most of the time, it's not true.
Mhm.
But we end up in these situations thanks to social media, thanks to influence, thanks to past experiences, thanks to whatever it is that causes that insecurity. We have it. And it causes that same toxicity that could just Hindenburg your career. And if you
Yeah.
don't get that reference, it was a sinking ship a long time ago. Sorry, I'm dating myself.
I I I like that you've like really taken the time to understand like your own, I'll call it insecurities, and then how
Yeah, we
where they
have to.
came from and how you generate. how do you go about, I think a lot of people probably not, they probably not aware of it, but like you mentioned your father,
Yeah.
how did you come to the realization that you were seeking these attaboys? And then how did you make peace with the fact that that came from a past experience and like get awareness so you can move
Yeah.
forward? I think a lot of people struggle with that.
It's a good
Okay,
question.
like I've had these past experiences. They don't define me, but I definitely have some emotional habits that might not be useful. And how do you, what can you help me understand your process with that?
The skill to develop is self-awareness.
Yeah.
People do not give it enough credit. People think that I can't admit that to anybody. I can't admit it to myself. Just admit it, open it, own it, man. Like you'll find ways to get around it. And when I how did I realize that about my father? If you go back and listen to anything at all or read anything I wrote about my father, you'll know that it's been ingrained in me since birth. Like we all walked on eggshells because you never knew, you know. So when you look at it from that lens, it's a really easy thing for us to recognize it, see it acting in our professional environment, and head it off. But until your team, and we're back to like having that community, that support system,
Mm-hmm.
until your team points it out to you in a way that makes it so that you feel comfortable dealing with it. I'll give you a great example. I'm very fortunate again. When your CEO tells you this, you are on the bus like indefinitely. You have a seat. You've earned your stripes on the bus. No matter whether or not your seat changes or not is irrelevant. You are on the bus. You can let that go. That insecurity can go. And that was the moment for me where I was like, man, this has all been for naught. I'm feeling this way for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And once you realize that it's coming from within you, right? Everybody,
Yeah.
again, we're looking externally for the stress, the thing that's causing our stress. It's always coming from within. Oftentimes I talk to reps that are like, I think my manager hates me. I think my manager's out to get me. I think my director wants to fire me. I'm like, yo, are you like hearing any external language about how you're not pulling your weight? When you go to your one-on-ones, are you being like, toes to the fire for your pipeline reviews? Like, what does that look like? And they're like, no. I'm like, how much of this is coming from you? How much of this is just your
Yeah.
insecurity? Almost every time they're like, yeah, probably all of it. Because they have no signs to point to it, but they feel it deeply within them. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It changes the way your brain chemistry works around it.
It being what the lens through which you're looking at life.
The insecurity,
Yeah.
the cause
Yeah.
of it, yourself, if you will, right? Oftentimes, this is like the first shit like that happens, and you realize that for the first time, you are the cause of your suffering,
Yeah.
right? It's mostly you. And that's the message. If anybody's listening to this,
That's the one message. Yeah.
the majority of your stress is not coming from an external factor. It's coming from you.
And what I agree with you, when someone hears that and goes, whoa, like what do they do with that? I agree with you. I wholeheartedly agree with you.
Oh, it's easy to give you some like, stupid cliche and be like, let go, right? That's the easy language to
Yeah.
use. But the truth is that really process it, think about it, write about it. If you're a musical person, some people will write songs and like belt them out day in, day out in the shower, whatever you need to do to process it, to make it work through you. Do it, man. Like nobody's gonna judge you, right? This is 2024. People are weird. Like we we
Yeah,
are
yeah, that's
weird
an
humans.
understatement.
If you have a TikTok account, you know how weird people are. Like just
Yeah.
embrace it
Yeah.
and process through it. And I promise that you'll come out the other side feeling better, feeling more complete, being more productive, being more successful, having a better, clearer identification vision of what success looks like to you. And you can take actions much more freely to accomplish those goals.
Yeah.
That is the message. If you want to be successful, start by letting go of that insecurity and that stress.
Yeah. And so now coming back to confidence, how do people develop in your mind confidence? It might be the same process, but I see is like letting go of insecurity is a little bit different. Maybe I'll take this back later, but right now I see it as a little bit different than building confidence because I see taking away security is like almost like clearing the foundation of a house. But then once you have the foundation, now you got to build it back up, right? So it's almost like a step. But how do you help people build confidence?
Well, what do great leaders do? They break you down so they can build you up. Then they break you down again and then they build you up again, right? That's what great leaders do. We don't need leaders to do this for us. We can do it. They can do it the way that they want to do it, but we have to do it ourselves. It's like a self audit, right? I call it a self audit, is like look within and find those things that you think are impacting you and work on them.
Yeah.
One of the things that I do is I am a what is my tone person. I used to have a major anger issue because I was an angry human, right? I had a lot to be angry about. So I would say things, and my wife would say, it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, it's your tone. So work on that. If people, and if you're like me, there's probably a lot of people out there that are hearing that and going, oh my gosh, people say that to me all the time. Adjust the tone. You could still say the same thing. You just have to say it with a
Change the tone.
tone that is more acceptable, more apropos for the situation, right? You could still say the same thing. Adjust the words you're using, change the lens through which you're saying it. There are lots of things that we can do. The way that we interact with each other is a representation of how we grow both personally and professionally. So if we take time to hone that confidence in without being offensive, whatever that might be. Some people are like too loud. Some people talk too fast, right? I'm very like I talk a lot. I'm very passionate when I speak, right? So people are like, oh, that's a lot. He's a lot for me. We all have that personality that we gravitate towards. Go find those people, go find that crowd and change those things about yourself to help yourself get more confident. I also use mirror. I look in the mirror when I'm saying something that needs to be said with confidence and I say, is this how I talk? Does this feel natural? Are my mannerisms me? Is this the authentic James or am I forcing this?
Mhm.
Right? Those types of exercises help you to develop that confidence and deliver it consistently every time.
Yeah. So if I was going to distill that, it would be getting awareness on the areas that you're weakest and then making small steps of progress on those areas so you can develop, right, and become more, maybe more whole is not the right word, but I'll say more
Maybe it
whole
is.
or maybe well-rounded.
Well-rounded is a good word too. I think the best salespeople that I know are very well-rounded salespeople. They have a high EQ, a high emotional intelligence. They're extremely observant. They ask great questions and they try new things all the time. They take that risk. Those are the best salespeople that I know. They also realize, and this is a Tom Boston original. Shout out my friend Tom Boston.
Boston.
They also realize that perfection is an unrealistic expectation and that they're never going to be perfect. And isn't that a reason to celebrate? It doesn't have to be perfect, y'all. It just has to be effective.
I like that. And you walked into what I want to touch on last. I think it's something really powerful about you that I even remember from the time you told me about your story of like getting connected to John Barrows and
Yeah.
things like that is I feel like you do a really good job of putting yourself out there. And what I mean by that, it's like you even told me, like even back, I think it was like 2016 or something, like back in the day when making content was still wasn't new, but it was newer. People weren't doing it like they were doing it now,
Yeah.
right? And you
Yeah.
you put your content out there, you tried stuff. Like what? How do you give yourself the permission to go like try something new and to put yourself out there? I feel like a lot of people really struggle with that. I even struggled with it in the past. And so how do you give yourself that permission? What's that like? I know it's as easy as just like doing it, but the mental
No,
process is
I'll
harder.
say this. I'll say this because, and again, man, so much that I've learned from my team here. Shout out John Barrows. Confidence comes from competence.
Yep.
You, there are a lot of 20-year-old life coaches out there, right? And not if you're a 20-year-old life coach, sorry, but like what life are you speaking of that you're coaching people on, right? The same thing happens when we're starting out creating content. People think, why would anyone care what I have to say? And every content creator, no matter how successful they are, had a point in their lives where they first started and they didn't have a following. 18 people followed them on Instagram once too, right? If we keep this in mind, then we can just be consistent and worry about the messages that we're delivering. So here's my tip. As you're driving around, as you're watching TV, You might see a billboard, you might see a commercial as you're talking to your friends when they have this great back and forth with you. You're going to have floodings of ideas for content that come your way. If you develop the mindset of, how can I turn this into content? Would this make good content? Is this relevant content to my audience? If you develop that mentality and start making a list of all your ideas, you can wake up every day and you can execute on one of those ideas, and you will have multiple a day. So it's easy to create a big master list of ideas and then create one every day and set your timer. How long is your content? Well, go for a minute first. Can you fill it up? Can you do it consistently without stuttering and stammering? How many takes does it take you? Are you on take 17? You're trying too hard. It's
I think that's a great point, though. There's a balance. Sometimes you're trying too hard, right? And you just gotta let it
well,
flow.
I'm a one take person. I hold my phone in front of my face. I talk for 30 seconds. I talk for 45 seconds. I talk for a minute. I put a couple of thoughts of my own on the post. Maybe I tag somebody that gave me a tip that I'm sharing, right? And then I post it and I walk away from it and I go do my job. And then I come back and I engage. And then I prospect from it. That's the part most people skip.
I like that. You're a one take person, which again is um yeah, shows that you've really built I'd say the muscle of just being able to handle mistakes and just be able to push through it regardless.
Sometimes I stutter, sometimes I stammer, sometimes I pause for a minute and I just post it, man. Don't worry about that. You don't have to edit everything out. Not everything needs to be a Hollywood production with special effects and all that. There's a time and place for that, and you'll get there when the time is right.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for working with Grant Green and the Uncrushed team, I don't think I would have got there. That was my transition point. He taught me so much. They taught me so much about production and equipment and what a quality podcast should sound and look like.
Yeah, I lied. That wasn't my last question. I want to have a follow up because it's something that I used to struggle with before Canley had more success in sales. Is what do you say to people that want to be creative or start something new, but they're like, man, my finances just aren't in place for that. My finances are messed up. I don't really have time to do
Yeah.
anything else besides my job. Like, what do you say to people that really struggle with their finances and they want to go do something creative, but they feel like they don't have the time or the resources?
Well, first of all, if you have a phone, then you have the resources to create. You can create a social account on any account, and you can hold your phone in front of your face and share your thoughts and talk to your audience and ask them questions and use hashtags. And that takes no money at all. That takes time and energy and a give a shit factor. John Barrows again, right? The give a shit factor.
Factor,
You
yeah.
need that, right? If you do that, you'll find that you can build a following and people to talk to. The concept here is that the purpose of creation is to create content. Content is the road to connection. That connection should lead to a conversation. That conversation is the doorway to a relationship. Some people call this trust. Once I earn that trust or that relationship, I should have no problem either uncovering an existing opportunity or just asking for one. And the law of averages says the more opportunities I have, the more sales I make. We overcomplicate it with all of the external input and I better make this one message count and bullet points and videos and everything else. Like, it's all good, man. Be consistent and you'll win way more than being clever or
Like
being
that.
tricksy or
Yeah.
being manipulative or being deceitful. Be consistent. That is the key.
I like that. So no matter what, be consistent.
That's right. Even in creating content, right? Don't, I'm not saying you have to create every day, but don't go a month without creating something and then create your next video and be like, oh, social doesn't work.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that's a very
silly.
fair
That's
call out.
amateur shit,
Yeah,
right? You got
I
to
think
get
it's a
that
very fair call
mentality out of
out.
your head.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very fair call out. What is the last We talked about a lot, James. I really appreciate you going deep, and I knew that, and I knew you would, and I feel like you have a really good background
Life
for
is
this.
deep.
Life is deep, yeah, and unfortunately, yeah, it's often played
Yeah,
not so
career
deep,
growth is
but
deep.
it's deep.
Professionalism
Yeah,
is
deep
deep.
shit. What is the last piece of advice that you want to offer the audience, or maybe something you
Uh,
want to encourage them, um,
yeah.
yeah, to go
Uh,
do or execute on?
you know what? It's actually the opposite. I would love to tell you that here's this one thing that you should go do and execute on, but I'm going to give you something that might feel a little counterintuitive instead. Slow down because nothing you ever gave a shit about happened overnight.
Yeah,
Everything that you care about in your life took time to develop, whether it's a skill or an award you won or a skill that you are just the best at. It took time, consistency, effort, care, support, all those things. Don't believe that one day you're going to wake up and be successful. Nah. Work towards success, and every time you achieve it, move it a little further out. That's the best course of action I can give people on the show today.
thank you. I think that was a really good way to end. Um, Everyone, James Buckley. James, thank you so much for coming on the show. I feel very
My
grateful to
pleasure.
be able to have sat here and taken
Yeah,
notes and just learned. So thank you, my friend.
you got it, buddy.
Awesome.